If you were dying, would you go to an AI hospital? No doctors, no nurses, just type in how you feel, here's some instructions, a syringe, good luck. Probably not. That being said, would you go to a hospital that had no AI, just pens and papers and abacuses and three-tiered balance beam weighing things and whatever else they have in 1890s movies? Probably not either. So maybe there's something in between. We don't save lives here in that way at Hillview Partners, but I do like to believe we do save some lives or make lives considerably better along the way in what we do actually do. And we have a particular view towards AI, what it will change, what it will not change in the investment banking world. I'm Arthur Petropoulos, Managing Partner and President here at Hillview Partners. We're a middle market, lower middle market investment banking firm, helping companies, owners, and executives generating typically $1 million to $20 million a year in pre-tax earnings or EBITDA to sell their companies or secure capital. So if AI is taking over the world, if it is cannibalizing every industry and it's extracting the humanity out of all things, how does that actually impact investment banking? Well, similar to how machines did 100 years ago, similar to how software did 30 years ago, we see a very similar future in artificial intelligence. Now, we can't speak to how hospitals will be run or every other industry in a granular sense, but what we can speak very, very specifically about is how it will impact the business of investment banking. Investment banking being either the representation of selling a company or finding a company capital, or on the buy side of helping a company acquire a business. And so although there's many steps that are involved in undertaking any of these exercises, we break it down into 5 primary activities, let's say, that investment banking is comprised of. And let's dig into each of these as to how AI is already impacting it and how it is likely to continue impacting it, or how we foresee it impacting it further as things progress. So the first element is research. Now, this can be research for a particular industry. This can be research for prospective acquirers for businesses, but understanding the landscape. If you think generally of research in a business as understanding the ecosystem, what are the nuts and bolts and gears and levers and pulleys, and what's the supply and demand? What are the variables that make things move or oscillate within a particular industry, whether it's raw goods, whether it's technology, whether it's labor, whatever the moving parts are. But research, how did historic research work in investment banking? Well, going way back, you have these things called books, but as things have evolved, it's a combination of online research databases, and what we've found AI being useful for and really accelerating is the pulling together of all of these sources of information. There's plenty of higher priced, call it databases, whether it's PitchBook, Capital IQ, Grata. There's a lot of different ones in specialized research reports as well. And while all of these things can be helpful, what we have found is whether it's Claude, ChatGPT, or otherwise, it's pulling together a lot of these things, particularly when you had kind of these industry rags, or we used to call them, or like kind of industry update newsletters of, you know, the Windows Monthly in the Southwest America, the chemicals newsletter, and these things used to highlight who's buying things, who's selling things, what capital is being deployed, what values are being paid for things, because comparable transaction data in particular within the lower middle market or middle market, so say sub $200 million companies, has always been very difficult to find. However, what we're finding is that AI is doing a tremendous job of scraping and pulling all this information together. So it's the same research, we're looking for the same things, we just have more centralized means of pulling it together, which ultimately means a deeper dive in the same amount of time. Now, the second variable is writing and materials preparation. This takes 2 interesting angles. So the first being, a lot of this is, again, accelerated. Now, whether AI has not necessarily done the formatting of documents well thus far, however, it has done a decent job of drafting certain information or pulling certain things together. Again, all of the writing that we do within our firm, transparently, is still all done by humans. However, we have run it through certain AI to revise or try to pinpoint any deficiencies in certain arguments and things like that. So it can be a good sounding board or iterative exercise. However, at the end of the day, you know, as they say, you don't know anything well that you can't write down clearly, and therefore writing is still one of the key things. Now, what I will say is all of the fluff that used to be in the writing of investment banking. I remember back in the day when I started in banking, it's going kind of late 2000s, early 2010s, these books sometimes were 50, 60 pages, and I know that still exists, but what we've found is some of these books were 50, 100 pages, and a lot of them was just kind of fluff about the industry. But what we found now is there's so much there's so much average content out there that people are really just looking for the specific things. And so particularly if you're in the business of selling smaller companies to very large enterprises, if we're selling an industrial components company and we go and approach Honeywell or Saint-Gobain's or whoever and say, hi, we have an opportunity that we want to discuss with. They don't want us to tell them, did you realize that the industrial components for HVAC systems are growing at a cumulative average growth rate of 9% a year, expected to go to 10. They'll say, thanks, Arthur, we wrote that research. Or thanks, guys, we get that. We just want to know about your deal. So what we found is as the world is getting flooded with information and a lot of kind of mediocre or just filler stuff, people actually want less filler. There's this funny meme, and we'll try to pull it up if our editor can find it, that someone types in 3 sentences into a computer and says, hey boss, look at this, I write 3 sentences, and it writes a paragraph. And then on the other side of the screen, someone says, hey boss, look at this, I got this giant paragraph and I can use AI to bring it down to 3 sentences. What we're finding is just cut to the chase. Tell people about the company, why is it different, why is it special, why is it a missing puzzle piece for what they want to do, what access do you have, what capabilities do you have that they do not. That will get people excited more than telling them about the industry that they're already a multi-billion-dollar company in. You're not going to change the direction of the boat. You just want to find or get a sense as to where it's going. And if it's going in the direction of the thing that you are selling, that's where magic happens. And that's what we like about AI in particular as it pertains to writing and materials prep. It can assist you in synthesizing, crystallizing, but in an AI world, saying less is more valuable than saying more, so long as what you say is potent and really cuts to the chase of what people want to know about. Number 3 is outreach. Now that's outreach of okay, so you have a company, you have 200 people, 500 people, 1,000 people that you want to reach out to who might be interested in buying it. How does that outreach take place? And I would say for this, every way that people are doing outreach for getting customers are similarly applicable to finding prospective acquirers of businesses. And so that is the same whether it's automated emails with AI components kind of interspersed into them, which you'd be amazed. You can scrape anybody's LinkedIn, you can scrape anybody's website, you can find interesting things about all sorts of companies that you can then automate an inclusion in, whether it's in an email or otherwise. And again, we go through everything and it's personalized to a degree, however, it can get you really good kind of paint on the board to chisel down from. And so whether it's that LinkedIn messaging, calling people, just being prepped for the call. So again, it's not that it's replacing any of the human element, it's just facilitating, it's just assisting. So in preparation for reaching out to an acquirer saying, hey, our company is the missing puzzle piece for you because of XYZ, finding out what that XYZ is takes a lot less time than it used to, which again, keeping the amount of effort you can deploy into something consistent allows you to do a tremendous amount more of work, which we're starting to get towards the conclusion here, but we won't reveal the secret thus far. Now, number 4, and this is still the most kind of manual component of a deal that I do not expect to change, is negotiation. And so when we are negotiating a deal for selling a company in particular, we are looking at the value of the company, the structure of the deal, what's at closing, what's over time, the transition for ownership, how long do they have to stay, what do they have to do, how does that taper off, when do they get to the next season of life, and lastly, the 4th element being the stakeholders or the employee considerations. And so this element of a deal is still hand-to-hand combat. Okay, you can take all of someone's preliminary offers. You have 20 preliminary offers for a company. AI can help you get it into a nice table to kind of isolate the different variables. It can be, again, helpful for analysts in putting that together. But when you really need to duke these things out, you pick up the phone, you call someone and say, this is where it's deficient, this is where it needs to get better, this is what's a deal breaker, this is not a deal breaker. And I don't know if that game of chess will ever be truly, fully AI. Now again, if someone said, well, we'd like to change this, this, and this, can you use AI to kind of rerun the model to see what the return would look like, or to see what the consideration structure would look like for your client to be able to more quickly discuss it with your client? Sure. Again, it is speeding up of iterations of negotiations, but at the end of the day, this is where you cannot teach a new dog old tricks. You need to be on the phone, you need to have a few gray hairs, you need to have been punched in the face a few times, and this is where, of all the parts of the deal, the key differentiators can really take place. We always say, look, it's the right narrative, so capturing the differentiators of the business, the access to capabilities, the right audience, again, that's finding the right people to have the discussions with, and the right process. And part of the process, the key element, is the negotiation. So that part of it, I don't see being materially affected because, again, you got to know what you're talking about. And lastly, is diligence. And so let's assume you get to a negotiated deal, you have a handshake in principle, you sign a letter of intent, and now you're in diligence. Can AI assist in that process? Sure. You throw a bunch of documents at it. Will it organize it fairly well? Will it kind of tick boxes or track what's been supplied and what hasn't? Sure. Still requires a human element after the fact, but it will be sped up. So what's the takeaway? If you're bleeding to death, do not go to a hospital that only has AI. However, similarly, try to avoid a hospital that doesn't use AI at all. And that's what we're seeing in investment banking just the same way. It is a tool. It is a lever. It is a means of leverage, of doing more, of being more efficient, of being more effective. I know it's a trite phrase at this point, but AI is not replacing anybody's jobs. People using AI will. And so what does that really mean for the investment banking arena? We find it tremendously democratizing, right? It's not just the old boys network. It's not just who's got the fancier office, who's got more prestige, who's got more pedigree. It comes down to capabilities. Who's most talented, who's most vicious, who's most relentless in trying to get the results for their client. And you can use AI to assist in all of these things. And ultimately, whoever's the better, I want to say card player or chess player, pool player, whatever you want to think of it, right? Whoever at the end of the day is more capable will win. And that's the exciting part about AI. It eliminates all of the variables that used to be so capital dependent in terms of, well, our firm has 100 people and this firm has 15 people. Doesn't matter. 15 people can do 200 people's work if broken down the right way, if correctly done. Our firm can reach out to 500 people specifically independently. Your firm can only reach out to 200. It doesn't matter. It can be optimized. It can be iterated. And again, you'd be amazed at the amount of work. Because really think about it, at a larger investment bank, you've got pods of 5 people working on each deal. So even though the investment bank could have 1,000 people, there's only 5 working on each. Now we run our business differently. We've got, say, 14 people right now, and everybody touches a deal. It kind of goes through the same exact process. We find it gets a better outcome. But that being said, what does AI do? It creates leverage. And so what do you really want? You don't want on one end, cavemen carving out a wheel, nor do you want on the other end just this sterile, humanless thing that has no touch, that has no ability to negotiate, to get into the granular stuff. What you want is, you want Patek Philippe, you want Hermes, you want Aston Martin, you want the thing that presents well, that has a tailored element to it, however, at the same time, utilizes all available technology on the back end of things to accelerate, to leverage, to extract the best outcomes for what it is that you want to accomplish. And so, running through these again, research is being centralized. Writing and materials are being crystallized to what's really important. Counterparty outreach is incorporating AI such that it can be done at scale in a specific personalized way. Negotiations, not a lot of help from AI there. However, it does help iterate it or accelerate the process, but that's still going to be a bit of a duel, if you will. And diligence, it will speed diligence up in terms of organization, tracking, and ticking along the way. So at the end of the day, while I might be the youngest geezer in the world, my view on investment banking in terms of artificial intelligence, our view at Hillview Partners, is that AI will at some point be inherent in everything. You don't say, oh, I use this accounting firm because they used Microsoft Office. It's going to be the same thing with AI. It's going to be part of everything. It's going to be an enabler, an enhancer, a lever, a means of leverage of accomplishing more that's ultimately going to democratize almost every industry. It's going to erode most of the competitive moats that you see, particularly in services businesses, which is thrilling to us. It means we get to go to bat against the Houlihan Lokis, the Jeffries, the Stiefels, against all of the big guys, and it's going to purely come down to who's capable, who's more locked in, who's more responsive, and who's more tenacious about the deal, and we'll take that all day. So that's our thought on AI. This is creating some of the greatest opportunities I think the world has ever seen, and that's the exciting part, particularly in investment banking. So that's the thought for today. Keep pushing forward. God bless. We'll see you next time.